His ruling, the office of the Director of Public Prosecutions was only prepared.
Lots to come about about what happened today in court, but it's time now for a break. We'll be right back. His co-accused Sean Storm Campbell and Andre St. John have officially been released from prison. Here's Romano Lyons with that report.
But only one word matters today. That word is freedom. For 13 years, his fans have been devoted. This has been their chant. But today, it's a different song. That song, this woman's word to his wife.
Mama try to take care of me now and make nothing to that boy, I know.
And you don't hear this every day. This woman carried her children to the prison. She wanted to witness the moment when Kartel's feet touched the road as a free man.
What's important, I'm telling you, it's a word about snow. You know, everybody loves the man. And it's a good feeling for no say, in there, come a road, in get freedom, you know? In there for something.
Even though she knew he was free, there were moments when time seemed to be moving in slow motion. But this moment, when Deputy Director of Correctional Services Joyce Stone stepped outside, there was reassurance. He knows he has the fan support, but if he can't hear what he has to know, one message I want to say.
My father, just stay on the right track and don't make them put you back on that. You understand? Just come out from the world boss, we know world boss can do, and just do the right thing. We love you, your fans are there for you.
Everyone knew Mrs. Palmer was present, but another woman, quite brazen, said she wanted to be the first woman the entertainer saw when he stepped outside.
I tell them put on them whole heap of tattoo pain and get to see them, and they see me a beat them. Look! One heap of put on and I get to see them.
Happy is out for sure, but at the same time, at a loss for words.
I love you, man. They didn't have free the bus because time come. I never know that this, money to see this.
Thousands of sinks of the appeal court Wednesday to hear the outcome of the case, and when the news came back in their favor, celebrations broke out. Our reporter Dwayne Anderson was there and filed this report.
Pandemonium in Justice Square in downtown Kingston. Celebrating because their favorite entertainer Vybz Kartel was declared a free man. The other man they thanked in a manner befitting a hero is Isaac Buchanan. Barriers set up to keep the area safe were breached in the excitement as they rushed to express gratitude.
The justice system works, and I can tell you, under the guidance of Justice Sykes and now our Madam President, Jamaica has a father and a mother, going into emancipation.
The Vybz Kartel is one of the most popular artists in the history of dancehall in Jamaica, so it's not difficult to find his music. And within about 5 minutes of word emerging that he will be freed, a lot of his supporters gathered here in downtown Kingston and started pelting out some of their favorite hits from the entertainer. They're right here behind me.
Waterford, St. Catherine, more popularly known as Gaza City. There was deafening silence as a handful of people listened to the Court of Appeal judge as she handed down her ruling. In fact, there were more journalists on the streets than residents.
No retract, no retract, no retract.
Moments later, other residents descended onto the streets and the community erupted into celebration.
Wonderful, great film, General. Free real boss, right now.
As I meet some, I feel like I cry. I feel like I cry.
But just when the excitement began to peak, members of the security forces swooped down on the community. But that did not stop this resident from letting his voice be heard. Tension has been brewing in sections of the community recently due to an upsurge in crime. The police have increased their presence in the area, but some residents are of the view that Kartel's release could bring forth some change.
He can divide the community as well as he can unify the community. And I think based on what has happened and the love that the people have shown him, I think it's a unity that will be coming first.
I beg him to just cry out to God. Holy Ghost, cry out to God. and God will deliver him. I'm not beg God right now to deliver him.
Portmore St. Catherine celebrate the release of Vibes Kartel. The security forces are maintaining a strong presence in the area. They tell us they'll be here for the rest of the evening.
Myself, Christian Tavares, Pierre Rogers, Tamika Harris, Michael Lawn, and Everton welcome the judgment handed down this afternoon in the Court of Appeal by the recently appointed President of the Court of Appeal. Certainly, as lead defense attorney at the trial, I believe that the judgment is in the interest of justice and lends credibility to the various objections which were raised by the defense team at the initial trial. Let us not forget that the Privy Council had initially quashed Kartel's conviction. I think the fair treatment of this kind of high-profile matter by the Privy Council is another reason why many Jamaicans, including myself, continue to support the Court of Appeal, or as it's referred to nowadays, the Apex Court.
The forces to keep the streets clear and also maintain order. What I'm saying with the merchandise is I go sell happy now.
Darling, I break this man has to take out 12 pieces to sell off in no time. 3 grand and if you have 2.5 you can get one because it's not Chinese made. You hear that? See the tag there? On a Chinese made. Straight LA right now, free world boss. Remember you can't keep a good man down. No matter where you do society, no matter where you do, you can't captivate the boss. You hear that? Them man they make me in the street a hustle. Them man they say make money anywhere now. That's why I'm a friend out there agree. You hear that? Cause of life.
At least one fan believes this development will also have a positive effect on other Jamaicans thousands of miles away in France.
That how much of the Olympics are cartel free?
They said the athletes are going to take some information.
They say oblique, pocket racket, Sharika Jackson, when no way I get goal.
You think they'll be motivated because of this Vibes Kartel verdict?
Everyone will be motivated because Vibes Kartel is free. The younger generation in music, everybody are going to want to do a column now. This is the Vibes Kartel, this is a legend we're talking about.
What was your, belief coming in?
On the legal front, attorney Isaac Buchanan shared details about the entertainer's health and said that was a key detail in the court ruling favorably in his and the other men's favor.
You heard a month ago his heart function was below 50% from last year, so that's 32% of beating. So we need to ensure that he gets the medical attention instantly.
Obviously his fans would want to, they've not been able to speak to him and hear from him. Any plans for like a party anytime soon, or what is his health like that won't make it possible?
I don't want to get myself in any problems, but the medical team needs to be on standby.
Dwayne Anderson, TVJ News.
Now over in Waterford.
Details of that story a little later on, but
factors that the court looked at in deciding whether a retrial should be ordered. Obviously, since they're free, the court decided against the retrial. So I just want to run through those quickly for you, and we can bring them up on the screen for our viewers to see, Archie. So the court looked at, one, the seriousness and prevalence of the offense in this case, murder. And when they say prevalence, they're talking about the fact that we are a high crime environment in Jamaica with whole heap of murders. They looked at, 2, the strength of the prosecution's case, 3, the availability of prosecution witnesses and exhibits for a new trial. And the concern here was whether the prosecution witnesses would be available for the new trial. Also the concern that had been raised at the retrial hearing that some of the exhibits apparently weren't available for a new trial, including some of the critical exhibits, the DVDs with the voice notes, the DVD with the video that was alleged to have been of the murder itself. The availability of defense witnesses. One of the defense witnesses had actually died. One of their key witnesses died since the first trial. Big concern for the court, the issue of delay and whether there could be a retrial within a reasonable time. Because what happened, the men have been in trial since September 2011. Lizard was killed in August 2011. That's nearly 13 years. A retrial could perhaps take another 2 years before it gets underway. So then you're coming into possible conflict now with the men's right, constitutional right to have a fair trial within a reasonable time. And the court was looking at the fact that if a retrial was ordered, you'd then be talking about probably breaching their constitutional rights in terms of that. They looked at the issue of the time and cost of a new trial and impact on the court's resources. 64-day trial. What that means is that if you're ordering a retrial, other cases are going to be bumped down the list. Other cases are going to be, sidelined as a result of this. Tremendous cost as well, and it just takes up a whole heap of space in the court. The ordeal of a new trial for the appellants they looked at, we heard of the medical evidence which had been given to the court to show that Kartel, for instance, is suffering from Graves' disease, reduced heart function. We heard of the psychological effect on all the men and the financial toll this had taken. So the court looked at that. The impact of prejudicial publicity on a new trial, but the court said this didn't in fact help the men. So that wasn't a factor there. Whether a new trial would give the prosecution an unfair advantage, changes in the Jury Act, potential legislative changes in sentences for murder, and the possibility of the prejudicial effect of the mandatory minimum terms before eligibility for parole. What this means is that they were concerned that if the men were tried again, that they could possibly get a sentence which, based on mandatory minimums, would be longer than the sentence they had got at the first trial, meaning the length of time they would have to serve before being eligible for parole. That's not supposed to happen. You're not supposed to get a harsher sentence on retrial than you got the first time around. So what the court did, I've cited all of that to say that the court has a complex task. It has to look at all these factors, balance all these factors, the seriousness of the crime against all these other factors, and on balance, the court came to the conclusion that it's not in the interest of justice to order a retrial.
Was there any particular matter that the court considered that it was like this was perhaps the turning point for us, or the most important matter?
I would say delay, because that was what we heard over and over again, the concern about delay and how their rights could possibly be affected there in terms of the right to fair trial within a reasonable time.
And finally, there's a lot to bite into, and we're certainly going to be doing that over the next couple of days. But talk to us about the significance of this ruling, because appeal courts also help to sort of shape the law. So the significance of this ruling as it relates to retrials.
There are a couple of things I would say, because the courts over the years have set out this list of factors to look at in terms of deciding whether to order a retrial. What this court did was look at those factors and add some more. So we now have a really, new comprehensive ruling in terms of the factors to be determined in looking at a retrial. But also I'm looking to see what the court says on the issue of publicity, because we've been relying on a case from the 1970s, the Green Bay killing, and we're now in the social media era. So I want to see what the court says on that. And one of the things I've been hammering away at Archie that I'm going to continue to say is that what we saw here was a possible effect of bribing a jury and how that could derail an important trial. We got the formula to fix that. The legislature, parliament has to pass a law that says when you discharge a jury, the matter can continue with
there's never necessarily closure when it comes to cases like this. There are times when the victims still, after the court makes a determination, never gets justice. Sometimes by a verdict, the appellants, the Constitution allows them the right to appeal. The presumption of innocence doesn't go away, and when your convictions is quashed, that the answers don't go away. What I can say is that I do empathize with the mother. I sympathize as well. We have to look, we can't walk in the shoes, but we do understand that her life was lost. And we as a nation have to find ways to comfort families, because this happens every day, well beyond this. And we cannot forget that while people are alive, the injustice works both ways, and whenever we have conflict, there are no winners.
And ultimately, the men start with the presumption of innocence. They've always maintained their innocence. And the purpose of a justice system is to try that, and a man is only guilty after he's found guilty in a fairly conducted trial. And for all of these cases, you can hear some viewers say, oh, yes, the family. But that is started with the presumption that despite the men being innocent, presumed innocent by the Constitution, not being found guilty in a fairly conducted trial, there's an undercurrent that they're still guilty. So that's why the families, the victims' concerns come in, because they're saying these men are guilty, so therefore they deserve what happened to them for the last 13 years. But importantly, what the Crown was asking the court to do was ultimately, and on the special facts of this case, that they appreciate that the men are presumed innocent. So what they're saying is, after 13 years, let us now start a process to find out if the men are innocent or guilty. And what the court had to answer, is it correct, is it right, after such a long time, so for the first time, be engaging on a process for a fairly and a fair trial. So all of what took place before is like water in the stand, because it was a verdict that was procured by a tainted process. And unfortunately, based on the facts of this case, the Crown on the facts played a role in what ultimately the mistake that took place. What role the Crown did is that the Crown, at the trial stage process, when there's a question of jury tampering, indicated to the trial judge that the judge should continue. And ultimately the defense lawyer said, no, you shouldn't continue. If at that particular stage, the Crown and the defense were in the same boat and saying, don't continue, I'm ultimately sure that perhaps there would have been a retrial and then we could have the argument about what takes place thereafter. But then in the heat of the moment, to be fair to the Crown, perhaps they said, no, let us continue. But on the appellate stage, you had the defense lawyers now, appellate lawyers, bringing cases and saying, this is why you shouldn't have continued. And the Crown read those cases and ultimately they resisted them. And they resisted them successfully. And ultimately the appellants weren't happy with that. They went to the Privy Council as is their right. And the Privy Council reviewed everything. And ultimately said, no, the trial just shouldn't have continued. And then after 13 years, when the defense from day one had maintained that this shouldn't have taken place, it was wrong. Should the defendants now be tasked with added responsibility of finding money after 13 years? Remember, none of these men could work during the 13 years. They couldn't earn during those 13 years. Some of them lose family members during those 13 years. Is it fair after such a long process? So the court had to grapple with.
So let me put
fix the process itself. The investigative arm of the executive also needs to ensure that the investigations are done. The Constitution, we need to have more conversations, more training in terms of not breaching and keep up with the court in terms of trying to have justice move along a lot faster. Fresh justice should be something that we consider.
Who was awaiting retrial 15 years after the incident took place. As I speak to you now, I know of one person who was in custody who was awaiting retrial 15 years after the incident took place. What I hope is an immediate
thousands under the tutelage of dancehall heavyweight Bounty Killer. He was always controversial with hits like Tech and had several collaborations with artists like Bounty Killer and Wayne Marshall as part of the then Alliance. A physical altercation with fellow entertainer Ninja Man during Sting 2003 threatened to derail Kartel's career, but the quick-witted and lyrical entertainer would not be stopped. A plethora of hits and controversies led to growing interest and notoriety for the Portmore native. He would later form his own group, the Portmore Empire, and fans of the DJ became responsible for bringing popular artists like Popcorn and Tommy Lee to the fore. A lyrical feud with another dancehall heavyweight, Movado, saw Kartel becoming one of the main protagonists in dancehall, with chart-topping singles like Last Man Standing. His single, Romping Shop with Spice, was the entertainer's first Billboard song and one of the biggest hits. Clarks was another mega hit for Vybz Kartel, and he also collaborated with international stars like Nicki Minaj, Eminem, Busta Rhymes, and others. But even as Kartel's influence grew locally and internationally, so too did allegations of criminal involvement. He was detained on several occasions by law enforcement and questioned in relation to crimes, including murders. His 2011 arrest and subsequent conviction for murder deepened support from his loyal fan base, and Free World Boss became a rallying cry for his supporters. Today, 4.5 months after the Privy Council quashed the murder convictions of Kartel and his co-accused, that rallying cry has been answered.
To digital downloads, to streaming era where he has over 1 billion streams on Spotify. That's more than anyone from his era. All the people that he came up with, except for Sean Paul, who went international, and Sean Paul was before him, but the people we came up with in that time, he has surpassed them in terms of influence and in terms of record sales. Behind bars, he sold gold in the US. That has never happened. That's a historic thing for an artist to sell 500,000 units of a single in the US. A dancehall artist at that. nowadays artists not moving any units, and he's doing that behind bars. So he has studied the media. He obviously studied people to know that they want to dance. And he studied the other side who know that they want the hardcore tunes. And he played with that from the inception. So he was always newsworthy. We're here talking about him. He has been, from 2002, he has been doing that. He has a song where they call him Barbara Glued and Oxen. Who is Vybz Kartel? So he understood media. He understood that you need to be on the tip of the tongues of people and be newsworthy. And he has been, since I've been doing World Music Views, he has been newsworthy either for music or something else controversial. When he starts to tour or release music while he's out, because he wasn't a stadium artist when he went in. Meaning he wasn't doing shows at the National Stadium.
Yes.
But coming out, Kartel is a stadium artist now, and we will see when he performs, where he performs, and how many people come, and you'll see I predict you'll see a difference between the audience he had before and what he has now. 95 album. People were going just because of Till Shiloh or Inner Heights. So you just need a catalog, and those fans that have nostalgia and they remember you and they followed you, they're going to be there. And I'm putting it to you that base has expanded, because who didn't hear about him before? They know now, because he has been in the news. This one tell that one, and his music also has more meaning now, because Kartel sings about real things that are going on, and his fans are connecting his music to his life, and they're feeling more in depth and connected to him. Like Tupac. That's how Tupac became this global figure, because Tupac, he was going through his trials and tribulations while releasing music. And Kartel is not one-dimensional. Today he's singing Thank You Jah Wake Up This Morning, tomorrow he's singing about clocks, next week about a girl, next week about bad man things. So he has all these fan bases that have a catalog of hits that he did for years. And they're with
You're
it.
saying we're good for values, for what we say.
So measuring good is a matter of who benefits morally. Dancehall is what Kartel does well, and this is what he's good for. He takes the lowest of the low and platforms it. He gives it a voice. So when he sings for the handcart man. He sings for the people who are voiceless. And he puts them on a platform because he's singing about what they're going through. That's what dancehall is. And then when it's heard in popular culture and in high society, they're like, oh, we don't want to hear that. But if you really study what Kartel is saying, it's what has obtained in the society. Kartel didn't make dancehall. There was Ninja Man before him. There were several persons who were singing.
Who attract the same kind of criticism about the gun.
About him being able to turn into poetry, into words, situations and circumstances that were created, not by him, by the society. He turned that into words. It's just singing man singing. His words he put together and put it on beat and put it out through radio airwaves or YouTube or wherever. That's what he's doing. And he's the only way that became popular or became interesting, it flopped. But if you put out a song that people like, oh, this is what's happening, or I saw this, or this is cinematic. Selling out 2 nights in New York, right? I think Kartel might be able to do something like that, or even bigger for his fans. But they are for him, his fans, that is. You have fans, and then you have super fans. Vybz Kartel has super fans because you either like him or you don't like him. There's no in between. You just have to either with the Gaza thing or you're not with it. And in fact, it became a thing where you were either Gully or Gaza, and they split the fan base. And now we see everybody coming back together from both sides. But Kartel's fans are for him, not just for what he's for, you know. He's away, they're still for him. He's out, they're still for him. He pushes the boundaries with sexual innuendos in his music, they're still for him. There are things that he did that other artists couldn't. And other artists tried, and it didn't work. But when he did, like there was and I don't know if we can talk about that on TV, but there was a lot of taboo subjects in the dancehall that Kartel translated in culture, and now everybody is singing about those topics. He didn't just stick to what was before him. he certainly had songs and had people celebrating things that were not accepted in the dancehall before. And as I said, I don't know if we can talk about that, but his fans know what they are.
I'm sure you can find a nice one.
You have a song, the title of the song, you might want to beat this out, is...
No, it can't be. No, it can't.
The title of the song is Girl.
Okay.
And that song explains what happens
certain kinds of sexual acts
in the bedroom. Yes, and he brought that to mainstream because the song became a hit. And then he did part 2. And that was the first time both men and women were looking at this act as something to celebrate in the dancehall. Other artists tried it in the 90s, like Baby Sham kind of suggested it, but when Vybz Kartel did it, boom, it became a thing. He did that with several other subjects. He made Clarks, he repopularized Clarks shoes, where in England they sold out. Everybody wanted, politicians started wearing Clarks because of him. So the fans follow whatever he does.
The definition of an influencer, that's whether you like it or not.
I think he's the most influential. After today, it could have been debatable before, but when I looked at everything today and the news coverage that he got today, I can say Vybz Kartel is the most influential dancehall artist.
Emerged hours after his release from prison, and behind the glasses and handkerchief was a confirmation of what his attorney said. The entertainer is unwell. In this picture we observed swelling around his eyes. His cheeks and neck were also swollen. This picture of the entertainer from when his legal woes just started in 2011 showed a vastly different look. The effects of time and ill health very clear. Now back in his community in Waterford, Portmore, the buttons came out Wednesday evening, a celebration as persons drank liquor to toast his release.
So the medical checkup, which is health first, you understand, so you just have to wait and see what's happening, and we take it from there.
The resident says he's also hopeful the added attention on the community will translate into more earnings through tourism and music-related activities.
Then my Waterford have a tourist attraction, as in the plaza. People will come and just by taking picture by the wall or by the sign of road run their way to the Gaza City. So that alone make people just fly from foreign and just come in just to take a picture and set them down on the Gaza. You understand?
Many of the entertainers' other fans hope the party atmosphere in Waterford will spread and culminate into a big concert in the next few days, headlined by Vybz Kartel himself.
You know what, more than Friday? Yeah, man, we have that like tomorrow Friday. You want to see the boss, we've been waiting too long. They hear that Freedom Street, they get a keep a good man down.
We know him going to do that, we can't depend on him for that.
How long you think before you get your first party of Kartel?
When we go to man at the 6th of August at Grand Gala.
Well, that will be arranged. That will be arranged. I really don't have control over that, so that will decide on his behalf. You understand? So, that would be a nice idea to keep showing Jammer. I know Jammer Gaza, so I'm hometown stage where in bus from, so wouldn't mind keep a show at Jammer, but it all depends on how the facilities is at that Jammer. You understand? If it can accommodate so much people. You have to look on the where it can accommodate a lot of people, because this station won't be a normal one.
Their successes are in there because he's an example of what dancehall is, from nothing to something. And I cover several artists, Shaggy, Sean Paul, Bob Marley, all of their successes are in there, the American market. And it really is a book about how reggae has performed since 1973 till now. Reggae by the Numbers, it's now on Amazon.
So now that need a separate interview. Sounds fascinating.